My name is Nelda Spell Mitchell. If you think about it a little bit, my name is a sentence. Nelda Spell Mitchell. That way you can remember it. I've got 2 books here. Have I told y'all this? This is just short stories of different things that happened in my life and my husband, Dennis Mitchell. And some of the things that happened when we were children, some is our life together, some about our family, and some we just were told about. It's really a history book of different things that went on South Mississippi and farm life during our time here. You can get these 2 books off of Amazon. Just call up Mr. Amazon on your phone. Well, you don't call, but you know how to do that to get Amazon. And tell them you want both books. You have to get both books to get all the stories, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And they don't cost a lot. And Mr. Amazon will send them right to your door. And they make wonderful gifts. If you need to give somebody a gift that you think they would really enjoy, you get them both books, and they will enjoy these. I'm going to read you one of the stories out of this book. It's about I've got to hoe the government rose. That's the name of it, is I've got to hoe the government rose. Now this is a picture of my husband, Dennis Mitchell, hoeing government rose. You can see how skippy they are. That means there's space between the plants where the grass was. He's done a good job hoeing that row. And this was made in 1973. And all this story that I'm telling you about, the government rose happened then, not the part about Corey. Well, Corey's story starts in 2015. Well, January the 15th, 2015, is when that Dennis and I were told that our daughter Beverly's granddaughter, Corey, who was 2 years old, was the number 2 standby for a liver transplant. Dennis's reaction was to breathe a sigh and comment. He commented, he said, "Well, looks like Beverly's got to hold the government rose." "Yes," I said. And we sat quietly, reflecting on events to come and events past. We both knew what we were thinking, but it would take a page or 2 to explain that. For little Corey was born with a liver problem called biliary atresia. The only cure is a transplant and divine healing. The expression about hoeing the government rose has evolved to mean that when you have a really bad job to do, just dive in and do what's needed to do to salvage as much as you can to get some good out of the situation. Well, to explain this story is really about trying to eradicate the boll weevils in cotton. In the 1960s, as boll weevils got worse and worse and worse, and more farmers quit growing cotton, our government officials in Washington, D.C. decided they better get on the ball and take steps to help the farmers, or otherwise all these officials in that nice air-conditioned offices would have to play golf in wool drawers, or either synthetic ones that tend to cling to you and just feel awful when you're out hot and sweaty. So someone came up with a theory of how to completely eradicate the boll weevils. And they did. It worked. It really did. It worked. It took several years but it has been successful. And this is how it was done. To begin with, there was a test program to find a chemical that would do the job to kill the boll weevils, all of them. The initial test area included our county, Covington County, Mississippi, and a few more counties around us because there had been cotton grown here every year since the first settlers planted it. And there was a severe infestation of weevils here. My husband, Dennis Mitchell, was one of those die-hard farmers who held on to try to grow cotton until it got down to where he was the only cotton farmer in our county in the late 1970s. Chemicals had been used for more than 30 years to try to control the boll weevils, but with very little success. At the same time, chemicals were discovered that would control the growth of grass and weeds. The most successful were called pre-emerge, which meant that they were applied on the soil and plowed in to kill the grass and weeds before the crops were planted. Farmers were having good luck with the pre-emerge chemicals and used them on all their crops. This helped in the reduction of labor costs because it eliminated lots of hoeing. But you still have to hoe some. The way the government test program worked was a work crew was hired by the government to go from field to field where cotton was to be planted, and with government equipment and government-bought seed, they planted a strip of about a dozen rows of cotton all around the outer edge of the field in early spring as soon as the weather was frost-free, and always before the farmer planted the interior of the field. If the field was jagged shaped, they went around it just like it was with their dozen rows. The theory was that these rows of cotton would come up and be growing before the farmer's cotton, so the weevils waking up from hibernation would eat and reproduce on the government cotton plants and would not be so bad on the farmer's cotton. The government workers sprayed different chemicals on their rows, and they put traps at each field to catch live, sick, dead weevils, whatever would go in the trap, in an effort to come up with a chemical that was successfully deadly to the weevils. Farmers were allowed to harvest any cotton these government rows produced. Oh, wow, man, that would be great. That many rows of cotton planted and sprayed for free. Wow. But these fellows in wool drawers in those air-conditioned buildings made no provision for any pre-emerge chemicals to help control grass and weeds. Pre-emerge helped tremendously, but even with the use of pre-emerge, cotton and other crops must be hoed some. The government rows had no grass and weed control, and they had been planted earlier so the cotton would be bigger, and all of this meant that the grass and weeds would be taller and bigger than the cotton. It was pure torture to hoe the government rows. But if you were going to gain any profit from them, they must be hoed so the cotton plant could produce. To hoe the government rows became known as the worst job on the farm. The grass and weeds would be much taller than the cotton that was struggling to grow. Plus, since these rows were planted while the ground was still cooler than cotton likes, The stand would be thin and skippy. That meant there would be spaces between the cotton plants. They would not all germinate because cotton seeds need warm soil for them to germinate and come up. During the 1960s and 1970s, when this test program was going on, Dennis hired several neighborhood teenagers to help our children hoe. They could hoe an entire field that had pre-emerged while Dennis dug out the government rows. Usually several of the children would help him so they could finish before dark and go swimming in the creek. The government program worked. The government workers did discover a chemical that was used to eradicate the boll weevils across the South. They started in Virginia with this spray, and they sprayed state by state. And they came down through Georgia. They went across Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and all the way to West Texas, where cotton was grown. It took several years to complete this program since they went by state to eradicate. Well, Dennis had quit growing cotton in the late 1970s before the eradication reached us. Not long after the weevils were gone, someone figured out how to GMO cotton so that the boll worms would not go inside the bolls of cotton while they were forming and ruin the cotton bolls. And so now the cotton can be grown without the plagues of weevils or worms. This GMO is genetically modified. And they figured out how to GMO cotton so that weeds and grass killer could be sprayed over the cotton while it's growing, and it will not kill the cotton. So this eliminated the need for hoeing. Plus, that generation of kids had gotten grown and went on to better jobs. Peanuts are not GMO, but a grass and weed killer chemical was developed that can be sprayed on the top of the peanuts plants while they're growing, and it won't kill the peanuts, but it will kill the grass and weeds. Chemicals do a better job and do not cost as much as hand labor. So now the biggest problem is the high price of everything that's needed to farm. We bought a boat big as my finger the other day. One boat, $8. We needed 4 of them. Now you do the math. All right, but we're still here. Farming's been a good life for us, and my husband and sons, they love it. That was the picture of Dennis hoeing the government rows. This is a picture of some of the children helping Don and Beverly. Don is right here, got his shirt all wadded up, and Beverly is over here on the side, and a few more little boys were helping that day. That was just a small crew helping. This is a bigger crew of girls. Beverly's the tallest one in the middle, and some of the neighbor girls on each side. They're hoeing in their swimsuits. They learned they could get a good suntan. They would grease down with suntan lotion and wearing their swimsuits, and then when they got to the edge of the field with the fields that had creeks around them, they could run, jump in that cold water and cool off, and it would feel so good. And this is a picture of Don in a bigger group. Don doesn't have a shirt on. That's a bigger group of boys. Don was 10 and Beverly was 16 when these pictures were taken. This is a picture of boys and girls taking a break by the pickup truck, get them a soda pop. Don is right here in the light blue shirt and Beverly's in the darker jacket there in the middle. Dennis always had a ice chest full of soda pops and water from to drink. Every time they'd get to the end of the rows where the pickup was parked, they got to take a break and get them a refresh there. That was good. They worked cheerfully, and Dennis paid them as much as he could.